According to a recent study published in April 2025, it goes on to reveal that about 89% of all professionals working in the UK are actually underpaid, or at least they feel like they are underpaid. And that is as a result of the rising cost of living that is mainly fueled by inflation, which is generally the rise in the prices of goods and services. And so in this video, we'll be breaking down 7 things that you need to do in order to take advantage of the flaws in the economy that would eventually lead to you becoming financially free. And so if you're new here, my name is Nana. I hold a master's degree in business finance. And on this channel, we discuss everything finance, trying to break down the key terms in the financial sector to make it easier for people to empower themselves and then pursue their financial goals. And this brings us to the first point, which is in order for you to build wealth through your salary, that is, if you pursue to double your salary, what you need to do is to find a way to upskill or to add more value to yourself. Now, mind you, employers pay you based on the value that you actually deliver. And so that is why most employees out there have KPIs or key performance indicators. So they look at all the resources that they have or the resources that they've entrusted at your disposal, and then they look at the output that you've made over a stipulated time. And that is what actually determines how much that you're going to get paid in that particular company or in that particular industry. So what you need to do instead is that you need to find ways of adding value to yourself. If you're able to learn a new skill or you're able to assume certain responsibilities that comes with a job, it helps you to also increase your chances of getting your pay or your salary doubled at the end of the month. Instead, what people tend to do is that anytime that they feel underpaid, they tend to actually hold back. So they don't give much in order for them to feel like I'm working too much and yet I'm getting underpaid. What you need to do instead is to try and then give all your best on the job, and that would actually secure your chances of actually getting your pay doubled along the line, because the company cannot do without you. You become so valuable that every single thing or every single operation that actually needs to be executed, they would have to tend to you. And that is how you increase your value and then increase your chances also of doubling your salary. And at this point, if you've done what we mentioned earlier and you still don't see that reflect in the pay, then what you must do is to actually change or switch industries. Now, what you have to know is that most jobs actually get paid more simply because of their industry, not necessarily because of what they do or what people do at their workplaces. Jobs in industries like finance, like engineering, like data science, usually tend to get paid more simply because of the prestige that comes with these jobs, and not necessarily what the operational systems or what the key performance indicators are that are associated with these jobs. What you need to know is that if you've done all these things, you've tried so hard to add value to yourself, you've gone on to charter, you've sought some specialized knowledge and some specialized professional courses in your industry, and it's still not paying well, then I think it is time for you to switch jobs and probably go into a whole different industry that would likely pay you more. That is a risk. So before you do that, try as much as possible and then assess all the options and then make sure that that is indeed what you really want to do, because switching industries sometimes can be extremely daunting and challenging, because that is a whole new field that you might not necessarily have any idea about. For example, I have a finance background, and so it'll be very difficult for me to go into like the data science or actuarial science field or industry and then perform there. Of course, that would come as a challenge that I may be able to overcome, but that wouldn't be done easily. So before you change or switch industries, you need to make sure that you've made all the considerations and then you've looked at all the options before making that decision. And of course, if you've looked at all the options and then you've made all the considerations and you still feel like where you're working currently is better off than any other industry out there, and your only problem is with the salary that you're currently being paid, then you might also consider actually going to your boss to actually negotiate a pay raise. And that wouldn't be done easily, because anytime that you do that, most bosses wouldn't actually be so welcoming. And then even after that discussion, they may go on to malign you or try to, play this politic with you in that office. So what you want to do instead is that try and then find the best time that you know that your boss is probably in the best mood, and then approach him or her in a very great way and in a very subtle way try as much as possible and then make a case for yourself. Don't just go because you've seen several people in several similar jobs getting paid more. You go to your boss and say, well, I checked a couple of things on, for example, like LinkedIn Salary Insights or Glassdoor, and I realized that people that are doing the same thing, of course, with the experience that I've gained over the years and with all the background, educational background qualification, are getting paid maybe like $100,000, and I am getting paid half of that. No, that is not enough, or that is not a strong case for you to actually secure a pay raise. What you want to do instead is to look at the past. What has been your contributions to the company? What has been the key things that you've done to actually ensure that the company also takes a step closer to the attainment of its mission and its vision? To what extent do the operations and then the things that you do in the office actually rely on you? You need to find as much evidence as possible in order to substantiate your claims before your boss. Don't just go there with emotions trying to buy them to increase your salary. Instead, you have to go them with actually specific stuff that you've done over the years that actually proves to the point that you really deserve a pay raise. Anytime that you go to them with a substantial claim, it is much more easier for them to consider it. And sometimes it might not happen even in a couple of weeks or months, or sometimes even years, but eventually it would happen simply because they know how valuable you are currently and they know how valuable you would be in the future. And so it's very, very difficult for them to just let go of you. And anytime that employees tend to push for salary rise or salaries getting doubled or increased, then it tells employers that they are not currently happy with what they are being paid. And then it also increases their chances of leaving the organization altogether. So they know that they may lose you. And then if, of course, like I said in the first point, you're extremely valuable, then they would find ways and means of actually either promoting you or actually increasing your salary or your pay altogether. Well, and at this point, after you've gone on to ask for a pay raise, if they are not willing to consider, then you might consider changing your job, or what is popularly known as job hopping. Research has proven that people who tend to change their jobs between 2 and 3 years actually earn more than their counterparts who stayed in the companies and then sought for a pay rise. Now, what you need to know is that before you job hop, you need to make sure that that job is in line with what you're currently doing, or is in line with any experience or educational background that you've had. Because if that is not the case, then you're likely going to stress in the new job, which would eventually feel so daunting that you might not necessarily even feel like you're getting paid more, because the stress that would come with that job would eventually eat into your finances, and it would eat, more importantly, into your emotional and, of course, your social life. So make considerations and then make sure that all the boxes are ticked and you know that this is the right job for me before job hopping or moving from the current job and the current situation that you're in into another company or another industry altogether. Well, so for most people, job hopping might not be an option. So what you may want to do instead is to start a side hustle or try and then commercialize the skills that you have. So for example, if you're a videographer, what you can do is to list on several platforms like Upwork and Fiverr, and then try and then edit other people's videos for them, or based on the knowledge or the expertise that you've gained at your 9 to 5, you can try and then sell these skills on these platforms, and that would actually help you to make money from your side gig. That is actually a sustainable way of doubling your income as well, because you have the skill set, you have, of course, the experience, and it is much more easier for you to deliver. And there are no, boundaries to how much you can earn, which means that you have the freedom and the discretion to earn as much as you want based on the time, of course, and the seriousness that you assign to any other freelancing work that you do. The next point that you may want to consider if you really want to double your salary is to relocate into, several locations or jurisdictions that actually pay you more. So for example, if you're to take two people, one living in Bristol, which is a very remote city in the UK, and then someone living in London, where there are so many multinational companies, it is much more easier for the one living in London to be paid more simply because of the person's location, as opposed to the person that is living in the remote areas of Bristol, doing the same work, of course, with the same educational qualification and the same number of years in experience. It is much more easier for you to earn more when you position yourself close to where these companies are. If it is much more difficult for you to get a pay raise at the current city or wherever you're living currently, then you might also consider in the future moving, which would eventually increase your chances of getting a higher paid job. This brings us to the last point, which is to find several other streams of income aside your 9 to 5. It's not easy doing that currently, of course, with all the fluctuations in the economy. But what you need to know is that the average multimillionaire out there have, on average, like 7 streams of income. So that is something that you may want to do. You may want to diversify your streams of income away from your 9 to 5. And that also ensures financial security in the future, because in the case of a right sizing or a layoff, you know that you also have something to fall back on even as you go on to search for a new job. So what you may want to do is that you may also want to build other passive streams of income, like investing in the real estate sector or investing in stocks. And of course, if you're not a fan of investing in the real estate sector or the stock market, then you may even want to find a high yield savings account. That would help you because it would return anywhere between 4.5% and then 4.6% on your savings. And that would also help you to actually push your income higher, because what you need to know is that you need to try as much as possible as time goes on to diversify your streams of income, so that in the case of any unfortunate economic turmoil, you know that you're still cushioned against the chances of actually being laid off or being unemployed as a result of that economic turmoil. At this point, if you found value from this video, I would humbly plead with you to like or subscribe to the channel. It really helps the algorithm. Thank you for watching, and then see you in the next video.